Main event, featherweight, the Korean Zombie, number 4 ranked Chan Sung Jung, facing off against Dan Ige, ranked at number 8 in the featherweight division. This is a pick'em, minus 110 a pop, man. But before we really break it down, I got a couple of thoughts that I want us to respond to, and this is gonna really help us break this thing down. Now, this is the first one. This was taken off of Reddit from user Never Slept 2 Mins. I'm just gonna read this out real quick. It says, lots of people have been saying Dan Ige will win. I'm just not sure what Brian Ortega 2.0 did is something that Dan Ige can replicate. Not sure if losing to the next title challenger that nobody had realized had drastically improved is going to mean that Korean Zombie loses to Dan Ige, who I see as a decent step down from Ortega. With that being said, just respond to that really quickly, AJ. What do you think about that, man? Brian Ortega 2.0 was something else, and Brian Ortega, he's fighting for a title for a reason. Dan Ige had a lot of success recently, right? He's he lost against Calvin Kattar, but he came back with that big knockout of Gavin Tucker. That was crazy because the governor is no joke. He also has wins against Edson Barbosa, even though it was a split decision, Mirsad Bektik, and Kevin Aguilar, which is there's no slouches in that list of his last 5. What do you think? Give me your response to this.
A step down from Brian Ortega. That's a hard one to swallow. I don't know if I'd go there because Dan Ige, man, he's this hell of a fighter. I definitely think his last KO against Gavin Tucker, although extremely deserved, don't get me wrong, I think it was one of those ones where he caught him. You know, he caught Gavin Tucker stepping in. He threw the right cross. It was perfect timing. And Dan Ige has to actually throw that punch to get the timing down. So all credit goes to Dan Ige for the KO. But we didn't really get to see a full display of his talent. So going back to the Calvin Kattar fight, he definitely got outboxed by Kattar. We saw the unanimous decision go opposite of Dan Ige. So I can see where the recency bias of saying Brian Ortega is a step up above Dan Ige. But as far as that whole situation, I don't think they're at least anywhere near the same kind of fighter.
Yeah.
I think Dan Ige, they're both the same size. They're both 5'7", both Chan Sung Jung and Dan Ige. But to me, Dan Ige feels like the shorter, stockier, harder hitting fighter, whereas Chan Sung Jung seems like that laboring zombie that we like to see. We saw in the Yair Rodriguez fight, he can win the whole fight and then get KO'd at the very last second. But that came down to more, I think, crowd pleaser. You know, he was down to swing it out. He was down to lose his fight on the Shield that night. Whereas I don't know if necessarily he'll take that approach with Dan Ige, because Dan Ige is going for that 50K bonus, or at least in his last option, 75K Dan Ige. I agree halfway with the comment with the Reddit post. I definitely think they're maybe not different level of fighters, but different style of fighters. So that makes all the difference. But to say Dan Ige is a step down, I think that's a bit harsh.
I hear you. And I'll definitely say I think Dan Ige is a completely different fighter, right? He's more of a boxer, you know what I'm saying? He's got some good wrestling. But that's kind of where it ends with Dan Ige, right? You know, he does most of his work in boxing range, which is like, it's super effective and it works for him. So it's not like that's any disrespect. But I think Brian Ortega, kind of what maybe that post was inferring to, is saying that, like, listen, this dude could do it all. He could hit you everywhere. He was outboxing you the entire fight. He could out kickbox you. If you want to take it to the ground, he'll submit you. He's probably a better grappler. There's just so many factors. And one of the things Ortega did was he was going to the well with calf kicks, then he would fake a takedown and then come up over the top, and he would just confuse him, man. And if you've been watching The Ultimate Fighter, I don't know if you have, AJ, I have, Brian Ortega coaching it, that's one of the things he tells his fighters. He's all like, you're going to go to the cap, go to the cap, go to the cap, mix it up to the head. We're going to play mind games here. We're going to be strategic here. But I do think it's definitely, it was an interesting take. And I have one more before we give our, all that good stuff, right? So this is from username Sadate All Damn Day. Don't know what it means, but shout out to you. It says, I'm going to read it off again. I always thought the part of Ortega's win over Korean Zombie people didn't really talk about was how much slower Korean Zombie looked in that fight than his previous 2. I just think the guy is aging out of upper tier contention, Maybe he can get his mojo back, but I think this one might end up being similar to Korean Zombie versus Frankie Edgar, where Frankie just looked too slow to deal with Korean Zombie. Similarly, it really wouldn't surprise me at all if Ige blew KZ out of the water just based on being the fighter in his prime at peak health. And I thought that was really interesting too, because with that being said right there, I'm going to have you respond to it right now. There is something to be said, is the Korean Zombie, he earned that nickname, rightfully so. And he has taken a lot of damage over his career. He's not the youngest dude. He's sitting there at 34 years old. Dan Ige is 29. He took very little damage in his last fight, and he's arguably entering the prime of his career. Give me your take and your response to that, AJ.
I don't know if Chan Sung Jung has ever been known for his speed. necessarily. Yeah, he does have very fast strikes, but his overall speed and pace and output has always been more so that of a zombie, kind of laboring forward, cut off the cage, down to sit on his strikes and throw heavy bombs, and down for a war, which is why we love him as a fighter. Him losing his speed, I don't necessarily agree with that as much. He definitely is getting older. All of us, we're all getting older in the fight game. But I instantly, before even hearing that comment, I would have gave the speed advantage to Dan Ige in the fact of just having more, life and exuberance, being the younger fighter going forward. And he has that timing that we like to see, because Chan Sung Jung definitely did get outpaced and was the slower fighter in the Brian Ortega fight. And I don't know. It's hard to say that he's not losing his speed, because he obviously getting older, he is, but he's never really, that wasn't his thing. We're watching him fight for. We're not watching him like we're watching Max Holloway with the speed, or somebody else that's incredibly fast, even a Stephen Thompson, where we're just seeing lightning blitz in and out, in and out. This dude's standing there. He's down for the war. He's going to plant his feet, let the war come, fight it on. But yeah, I mean, I agree with this one more than I do the last, Derek. What are your outtake on it?
Well, the one thing that I did think about that is you're right. We never really watched Korean Zombie because he's the fastest dude in the ballpark or whatever the case may be in the cage, but we really like him because he's a finisher, right? And he's not just a regular finisher. This is an individual who currently he has the second most finishes in the featherweight division at 6. He's tied for the most fight of the night bonuses at 8. That's why you're the Korean Zombie, because you're exciting, you put on a show. And what's interesting, AJ, that he talked about in his pre-fight presser is he said that if I lose this, I know I'm most likely going to be out of the featherweight title contention, but he didn't say like if I lose. He's like, in the weird situation, if I lose, like, he's like, I'm not expecting to fucking lose. What are you guys talking about, right? But he's like, if I do lose, I'll probably be out of title contention, but hey, at least I'll be an exciting fighter, right? So if there's one thing for sure is fireworks. He either wants to be known for the fireworks or being a legit martial artist, a legit champion. Now, with that being said, listen, man, this is a dude who's going to be there every single minute of the round. Like, even against Brian Ortega, he had to stay sharp all 5 rounds, right? And that's what Dan Ige is going to need to do. Now, can Dan Ige... Here's the thing, AJ. This is my question to you. Korean Zombie is not just a striker. Dan Ige, more or less, he has good wrestling, but if we're talking about grappling, I think Korean Zombie has a clear advantage, right? He's like one of the few fighters next to like Bryce Mitchell, who's, I think he did it before him too. He pulled off a twister in the UFC. Like, nobody does that, right? But it's only a couple fighters who have that twister submission victory, right? And Korean Zombie is one of them. One of the things that I really like about Korean Zombie, man, is if he hurts you, if he wobbles you, he's not the type of dude who I'm going to run up and I'm just going to overwhelm you with strikes. He will say, oh, you're wobbled? All right, I'm going to grab your back, hooks in, and I'm going to choke you out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to grab you, I'm going to grapple you, and then if let's just say I happen to not get the submission victory, okay, well, my hooks are in, and now I'm just pummeling you from top position, right? I'm pretty sure that's exactly how it went against Frankie Edgar. Like, he couldn't get the submission, so what did he do? He just strikes until they finished Frankie Edgar, right? So I think that's going to definitely come into play. On the feet, though, AJ, there's levels to this, right?
Oh yeah.
So who has the advantage on the feet? Give me a percentage-wise, like a 50-50, 80-20. Give me a percentage who has the advantage on the feet in this matchup.
On the feet, I think it's a lot closer. I definitely think Chan Sung Jung has the advantage on the ground for sure. But honestly, man, I'd go like 55-45. Ige has the advantage on the feet. It's very close. I think he has the speed and the power advantage, but the fact that Chan Sung Jung, like you said, will be there constantly, no matter what, and stay sharp, that's a hell of a tick to go against, man. Some dude who you can hit with all your power and he just kind of laughs it off and keeps walking forward, that's a hell of a demoralizer. We'll see how it plays out going forward, but if I had to give it a percentage on the feet, I'm going 55-45 to Mr. 50K Ige.
I'm with you, man, and I think it's definitely going to be close, man, but man, that's tough. Give me a... Yeah, I'll just go 60-40 on that one. I think 60-40 for the Korean Zombie. And the reason why I say that is because Dan Ige, man, he's wild sometimes. He'll throw these big looping punches, but he'll throw these straight blitz strikes out of nowhere, dude. And I think that'll be what's most effective. I do have to point this out, AJ. This is something that I noticed, and I had to write it down. Korean Zombie does this oftentimes. And it was a lot more effective for Brian Ortega because he was fighting out of southpaw, and that's not how Dan Ige fights. But he'll use his left hand, and he'll paw, and he'll parry. So he uses this to block the jab, right? Just parry, keep that timing, keep that distance management. But one thing he doesn't do with it is guard his chin. So that right hook sneaks right past that. And you know what Dan Ige has? A very sneaky right hook, man. That might give him problems. When I was going through the scenarios in my head, I said that's one way Dan Ige wins this fight, is he sneaks that right hook right on the temple, put him to bed, man. He has that power. We clearly see he has the power to put people away, man. When we're looking at methodology, 16-6 is the Korean Zombie, 6-3 in the UFC, 6 KOs, 8 submissions, 2 decisions for Danny Ige, 15-3, 7-2 in the UFC, very impressive. 4 knockouts, 5 submissions, 6 decisions. Both of these dudes are so well rounded, dude. This is gonna be such a fun fight. But let's talk implications, man. Pressure is on Korean Zombie. There's really no pressure on Danny Ige. I don't think so. At least, even though he seems very, very calm, cool, collected in this fight or in his pre-fight presser, and he seems like he's just ready to go to war. Let me just ask you, man, do you think that, like, what would a loss truly do? We talked about it a little bit just a second ago, right? But what does the loss do for the Korean Zombie at this point, right? No longer in the title contention, but do you think that this puts him on a real bad spot? Because he's won majority of his fights, you know what I'm saying?
He's won the majority of his fights, but I think he's lost a lot of crowd notoriety and popularity lately. So I do believe that for sure, if he loses and loses in stunning fashion, I think he's out of title contention and starting to go a little bit more to that gatekeeper position that we always talk about. He's been around so long. What is it? 16-6. Yeah. So what's that? 22 fights. Man, he's been around for quite a while, but not necessarily big wins, don't get me wrong, over Frankie Edgar and Renato Moicano, but also very big losses against Ortega Rodriguez, Brian Ortega #2. So I think if Chan Sung Jung loses this fight, he's kind of dropped back down, middle of the heap, not necessarily top contender anymore. I don't know if he'll get cut, maybe within the next 2 or 3, depending on how it goes. But I definitely think he's going to become more of that, like that Alexei Olenek kind of fighter we were talking about before, where we know what he's going to do. We know he's going to walk forward. We know it's going to be a hell of a brawl. He's going to be there the whole fight. But can you outclass this guy, out-technique this guy, and get past? I'm glad you noted that one thing about him pawing at the left hand, or him pawing his left hand to distract the jab and pairing the other ones. Because one thing Dan Ige likes to do is not only that right cross or that right hook coming over the top, he'll throw that hook, and the second that Chan Sung Jung starts to parry it outside, he'll throw it right down that right cross, straight down the pipe. And once you get that hand opening up, that chin opens up and taps him right there. It's going to be a long night. I see this fight. This one is actually very, very hard for me to pick. I've gone back and forth on this one. And the fact that they're both 110 favorites makes sense. This one's truly a pick 'em. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes down.
Yeah,
What you
yeah, and I'm absolutely with you, man. I do think that I'm gonna put a little more respect on the Korean Zombie's name, man. I don't think a loss ends anything really crazy for him. I think he would be able to get back into title contention if he strung together some good wins, but he'd have to just be a little more active. One of the things that he did notice, or that he did note, is that before he was making his training camps, they had to be in South Korea. Right now, he says, "Fuck that! I moved down to United States," because his coach, like his whole team, I guess, was kind of mad at him, being like, "Bro, like, why do we have? No, you need to come down here. This is where all the best trainers are at, all that good stuff." But maybe he was just trying to make the argument, because that's what Charles Oliveira did. He was like, "I don't need to move to America to be a champion." You know what I mean? Like, I can do it where I'm from. But it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit different, especially with the COVID protocol in different places around the world right now. United States is opening up a lot more than other places. This might be the best place to be. At the end of the day, man, I do think that the Korean Zombie, for me personally, I'm going to give my pick on this one. I think the Korean Zombie he's got a little too much experience with the real deal high level cats, and he has a couple more tricks in his bag than Dan Ige does. Because like I said, Dan Ige primarily does the majority of his work in boxing range, and Korean Zombie, he's going to eat away at at the canvas until he gets into boxing range. But like I said, he can also grapple with you, and I think that if he decides I need to squeak out a win and I need to do it the boring way, there's not much I can see Dan Ige doing to stop it. So I'm going to go Korean Zombie, but I'm going to go once again, AJ. I think I'm doing it for literally every single pick. Unanimous decision victory, man. 5-round grind fest. Who do you have and why?
Yeah, no, I'm right with you. I can totally see that going down. I can also see Dan Ige throwing some shots and Korean Zombie just walking absolutely through them. But me, man, like I said, this one's hard for me. This one was a toss-up. I've been changing my decision back and forth constantly, but I'm going Dan Ige by decision. I think it's going to be a grinder of a fest, fighting it out, boxing range, back and forth. It's going to be bloody. This is going to be that bloodbath that we were looking for the Matt Brown Diego Lima fight.
Oh, yeah.
I think this one's going to be very bloody. I think Chan Sung Jung isn't going to take a back step, whereas Ige is going to be trying to fight in boxing range, full pressure the whole time. Either way, I got Dan Ige by decision. I think it's going to be fun.
It'll definitely be a fun one, folks. So if you enjoy the breakdowns, you enjoy the main card stuff, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, allfactorsconsidered.com.